When Shaquille O'Neal walked into Whitfield's department store in Atlanta, Georgia, on the afternoon of November 14, 2019, not one person in that building understood what was about to unfold. Not the woman refolding sweaters near the entrance. Not the teenager restacking headphone boxes in aisle 7. Not the store manager standing by the service desk with his arms already folded and his mouth already shaping a decision he hadn't fully formed yet. Shaq was wearing a gray pullover hoodie, dark sweatpants, plain white sneakers, no logo, no jewelry, no entourage, no security. Just a large, quiet man who walked through the front door the way he had walked through every door for 30 years. Unhurried, deliberate, reading a room without announcing himself to it. 4 NBA championships. 15 All-Star selections. A net worth of over $400 million. One of the most recognized faces on earth. He had a list in his pocket. 847 names. He had come to this specific store for every single one of them. He was in the electronics section for 4 minutes before the manager appeared at the end of the aisle. Arms crossed, posture already closed. "Sir," Raymond Holt said, loudly enough for the 3 nearest customers to turn their heads, "I'm going to need you to leave before I have to call security." Shaquille O'Neal looked at the man and said absolutely nothing. He had noticed 3 things when he walked in. The first was the drawing. Taped to the inside of the unattended security booth window was a crayon drawing on yellow construction paper. A stick figure, tall as the whole page, wearing an orange shirt, surrounded by a crowd of smaller figures with their arms raised. Below it, printed in the careful block letters of a child still learning the weight of a pencil, "Thank you, Mr. Big Man." Shaq saw it. He looked at it for 2 full seconds. He kept walking. The second was on the service desk near the back wall. A stack of printed pages fanned open under a coffee mug. He couldn't read all of it from where he was. He could read the header on the top sheet, "Holiday Giveaway. Confirmed recipients." 17 lines highlighted in yellow, the rest untouched. Someone had been working through that list and had not finished. The third was the young man in the blue vest in aisle 7. Name tag, Marcus, 20-something, careful hands, straightening a display of wireless earbuds with the deliberate attention of someone who took the work seriously even when no one was watching. His hands were not shaking from cold. Shaq registered all 3 without pausing, filed each one without letting his face report any of it. He did not pause. He did not explain the clues to himself. He moved on, the way his stepfather had taught him to move through rooms that were trying to figure out what to do with him. Now here is the part that nobody in that building understood yet. The secret Shaquille O'Neal was carrying into that store was not simply the list in his pocket. Though the list was real, and the $200,000 he intended to spend before sundown was entirely real, the secret was older than that afternoon. It was tied to a specific name he had known for 3 years without ever speaking it to the person who carried it. A connection held in silence, not out of strategy, but out of something harder to explain and easier to feel. What Raymond Holt had absolutely no idea about was that the man he had just asked to leave had been walking toward a convergence, 6 lives pulling toward one moment in a department store aisle, not one of them knowing they were pulling at all. And you are not going to see this ending coming. Stay with us for the entire video, because the last 60 seconds of this story will rearrange everything you thought you understood about the first 60. Shaquille Rashawn O'Neal was born in Newark, New Jersey, on March 6, 1972. Newark in the early 70s was not a city that arranged itself gently around childhood. It was a city still rebuilding from the riots of 1967. Unemployment high, blocks half-healed, the particular weight of poverty that teaches children early that the world does not owe them a soft landing, and that the only thing within reach is what you choose to do with what you are given. Shaq was large from the beginning, not just tall, wide, heavy, structurally outsized, in a way that made rooms respond to the frame before they ever processed the person inside it. He knew it early. You cannot be 7 years old and already taller than most grown men and not understand, at some level, what the world is going to keep getting wrong about you. His mother, Lucille Harrison O'Neill, was 5'4" and made entirely of iron covered in warmth. She was the kind of woman who could deliver a hard truth with a soft voice and have it land harder than anything shouted. She looked at her enormous son growing up in a world that was going to keep misreading him for the rest of his life, and she gave him the only tool she knew would last longer than advice. "Your size is not your power," she told him. "Your grace is." She said it the first time when he was 9, after a teacher at his elementary school had arranged the classroom so that Shaq sat in the back corner because, as she explained to Lucille in a conference that Lucille attended without expression and left without raising her voice, he's just so large, and it makes the other children nervous. Lucille sat with that information for exactly 1 breath. She said the sentence again when Shaq was 13 and a mall security guard followed him through 3 stores for no reason he ever gave. She said it when he made the LSU Tigers. She said it when he signed with Orlando. She said it when he won his first ring with the Lakers. She said it in the ordinary Tuesday afternoon moments that do not make highlight reels, but are the actual material of a life. She said it so many times and with such calm certainty that it stopped being instruction. It became weather. The kind of truth you stop noticing because it never leaves. His stepfather, Philip Harrison, was Army, the kind of man the Army makes, which is to say principled and structured and occasionally painful and, in the long run, correct. He had watched his stepson navigate the specific exhaustion of being underestimated his entire life, and he had compressed everything he understood about it into 1 sentence that he delivered the way he delivered all important things, directly, without ceremony, until it stuck. "Don't be a reaction," Philip used to say. "Be a response." He said it when a rival coach said on television that Shaq's game had no finesse. He said it in a phone call the night before Game 7 of the 2000 finals. He said it when a sports columnist wrote a piece suggesting Shaq coasted on raw size and had never truly earned what he had. Philip Harrison passed away in 2013, which means he never saw the ownership stakes, never saw the foundation grow to the scale it eventually reached, never saw the afternoon in a department store in Atlanta when his phrase would walk back into a room 6 years after he was gone. But it was there. It is always there. Shaq built what he built the way things built, on real foundations get built, steadily, without the kind of shortcut that collapses later. By the time he retired from professional basketball in 2011, the championships and the all-star selections and the television personality and the doctoral degree in education and the business portfolio had all accumulated into something that was harder to categorize than famous athlete and considerably easier to underestimate than it should have been. Every November, for 11 consecutive years, he ran a holiday giveaway. No press release, no branded content, no documentary crew assigned to capture the moment for later use. His team compiled the list, underprivileged families across the South, nominated by community organizations, organized by need, cross-referenced by location and age of the children involved. He showed up in person, in a hoodie, and he bought what the families on the list had asked for. In November of 2019, there were 847 names. He had come to Whitfield's department store specifically because their inventory carried the tablet model his team had identified as the most requested item across 62 of those families. He was prepared to spend $200,000 before he went home. He had been in the store for 4 minutes when Raymond Holt arrived at the end of aisle 7. Raymond Holt was 54 years old and had grown up in Macon, Georgia, in a neighborhood where the primary industries were a textile mill that closed in 1991, and a collective sense of humor about hard luck that people in those neighborhoods develop because the alternative is worse. He had been exceptional at mathematics. Not good. Genuinely exceptional. His high school drafting teacher, a woman named Mrs. Pauline Achebe, who had been teaching for 29 years, wrote him a recommendation letter she told him was the best she had ever produced. He had been accepted to Georgia Tech in the spring of 1984. He enrolled that September. He lasted 11 weeks. His mother's stroke happened on a Tuesday morning in October of his freshman year. It was not the manageable kind. It was the kind that reorganizes everything overnight: the bank account, the calendar, the future. Raymond went home to Macon on a Thursday. He got a job at a sporting goods store on a Saturday. He told himself he would go back to school in a year. He meant it completely. He never went back. 31 years later, he was managing a department store in Atlanta, and he was genuinely skilled at it. He had won district recognition twice. He had mentored 7 associates into management roles himself. He had a real gift for inventory systems and for the human skill of making customers feel that the store valued them. He was not a cruel man. He was a scared one. The week Shaq walked through his front doors, Raymond had received a formal written warning from the regional corporate office. 3 customer complaints logged in the previous 90 days. 2 about communication style. 1 about a confrontation he still believed, privately, he had handled within policy. 1 more complaint, and his employment would be formally reviewed, which meant, at 54 years old, no degree, a mother's care facility payment due the 15th of every month, and a retirement account that was 12 years short of sufficient, that he was standing 1 written warning from a calculation he could not make add up. He had gone to bed the night before staring at the water stain on his bedroom ceiling, doing the math the way frightened people do, methodically, carefully, looking for the number that makes it work, finding none. When he saw a very large man in a gray hoodie browsing aisle 7, no basket, no bag, no apparent purpose, staying in one section too long from Raymond's assessment, his fear arrived before his judgment could intervene. He said the words before he had fully decided to say them. The second they left his mouth, something in him already knew. Back in aisle 7, nobody moved. Raymond stood with his arms still crossed, expression set in the rigid stillness of a man who has just realized he may have made a serious error and cannot yet find the footing to address it. His voice had carried to 4 customers in the immediate area. 3 of them had turned. Dorothy Simmons was 68 years old, retired principal, 22 years at Westwood Elementary, 8 of them as head of faculty development, and she was standing 12 feet from the electronics display, her hand resting on a Bluetooth speaker she had been considering for her youngest grandson's birthday. Dorothy had spent 2 decades developing a precise internal sensor for the moment when a situation was either going to teach someone something or confirm the worst about them. She had it now. She looked at Raymond. She looked at Shaq. She did not move. The teenager near the gaming display was 17, and his phone was half out of his jacket pocket within 3 seconds of hearing Raymond's words, because he had recognized the man in the gray hoodie the moment he walked into the section, and he understood exactly what was happening. He stopped himself before the screen lit up. He put the phone back. Something in him understood, not fully, not articulately, but correctly, that this moment was not his to distribute. Within the previous 3 minutes, Raymond had appeared at a different display entirely. The cordless vacuum aisle, where a couple in their 50s was comparing models. He had given them a full demonstration with genuine warmth, laughed at something the man said, recommended an upgrade with the easy comfort of someone who liked what he did. He had not looked toward aisle 7 once during any of it. And then there was Marcus Webb. Marcus Webb was 22 years old, from Decatur, Georgia, 7 months at Whitfield's, electronics and housewares coverage, night shift primary, night classes at Georgia Perimeter College in information technology, the first person in his family to pursue a college degree, a distinction his mother Anita had built toward from the morning he was born. He carried it the way she had taught him to carry the things that cost someone everything, carefully, with both hands, without putting it down. He had recognized Shaq the moment the man came into the section. He had kept working. Making a customer feel observed was not part of his job. He had continued straightening the earbud display and tracked the situation with peripheral attention. When he heard Raymond's voice, the words, the volume, the public direction of it, Marcus went completely still for 4 seconds. Then he set down the display case he was holding, walked to the center of the aisle, and stood beside Shaquille O'Neal. Mr. Holt, his voice was steady at a cost anyone could hear. This gentleman is a paying customer. He's been in this section less than 5 minutes, and he hasn't touched anything. Marcus, Raymond's voice dropped flat. Back to your section. I don't think there's a reason. Back to your section. Or we're having a different conversation tomorrow morning. Marcus did not move. There was a moment, barely a moment, less than 2 seconds, where it seemed like Raymond might step back from it, where his posture softened a fraction and his expression almost reached the place of reconsideration. Then a customer in the periphery shifted, and the fraction closed, and Raymond's jaw set again. Shaq looked at Marcus. Let him finish, he said, first word since Raymond had appeared. Low, unhurried, carrying the complete ease of a man who is not in any rush at all. The room changed, the way a room changes when a sound stops that you weren't consciously hearing, suddenly, totally, so that the silence lands louder than what was there before. The associate near the back office doorway appeared in the frame and stopped there, not entering. The sweater folder near the entrance had gone still. The teenager's phone was out again, screen dark, held at his side like something he hadn't decided about yet. Raymond Holt looked at the phone. Something moved behind his eyes. Not shame exactly, not panic exactly, but in the same neighborhood as both, living uncomfortably close to each. He looked at Shaq again. A full second this time, real processing, not surveillance. And something began assembling in his recognition, a face he had seen on a television program, a face he drove past on a billboard on I-85 every single morning. The structure of it clicking into place the way recognition arrives when you are afraid of what it means. I know who that is, the teenager said. Softly, into the room, not to anyone, just the plain fact of it. Released. Raymond's chest did something he couldn't describe later. Sir, he said, and the word sir arriving from his mouth a second time sounded different in a way every person in the aisle absorbed. Lower. The armor gone from it. I may have. You were fine, Shaq said. Still not moving. Still completely still. Finish what you were saying. Now, you are going to need to hold on just a little longer before you hear what happened next. Because before you can fully understand what was in Shaq's pocket and what it meant when he finally took it out, you need to know what Marcus Webb had been carrying for 3 years without knowing he was carrying it. And you need to know why Shaquille O'Neal had said both of his names. A witness who was shopping in the housewares section and could see the whole aisle from where she stood told a reporter afterward that the room had a quality she spent 40 years as an educator trying to name. It felt like a lesson arriving, she said, not being delivered, arriving like it had always been scheduled for this room on this day, and everything else had just been the time it took to get here. Dorothy Simmons, 12 feet away, was crying. Quietly, without wiping her face. Not from sadness, from recognition. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The floor held its breath. Shaq reached into the pocket of his hoodie. He removed a piece of paper, folded in quarters, worn at the creases in the way of something opened and refolded many times over many months. He opened it fully. 2 columns of handwritten names, close set, running down both sides of the page. Next to each name, a number and a category. Tablet, headphones, gaming device, winter coat, shoes, clothing set. He held it out to Raymond. Raymond took it. He read the first line, the second. He found the header, holiday giveaway, confirmed recipients, 847 families. His hands holding the page were not entirely steady. "I need everything on this list before the store closes tonight," Shaq said. "I have a team outside. They can handle the logistics. I can have a cashier's check cut within the hour if your corporate office requires prior approval." The apology Raymond Holt gave at that moment was not managed, not professional. It came out smaller than he expected it to, compressed, quiet. The specific variety of apology that has been sitting inside someone for a minute and has been looking for a door, and has finally found one. "Mr. O'Neill," he said, "I don't have an excuse for what I said." "I know," Shaq said. "I'm not asking you for one." He folded the paper, returned it to his pocket. Then he turned to Marcus Webb and said the full name. Both of them, Marcus Webb. Marcus looked at him. "Your mother is Anita." Something moved through Marcus's face that was not fear, but existed in the same direction. Something that had no immediate name. "Yes," he said. "Anita Webb." Decatur, Georgia, November 2016. And here is where the story you believed you were watching reveals itself to be a different story entirely. In November of 2016, a fire moved through a residential block in Decatur, Georgia, and displaced 11 families in a single night. Shaq's Foundation, operating as always without a press release or a camera crew, covered emergency housing costs for 3 of those families and established an anonymous educational fund administered through a nonprofit partner for the children in those households. The terms were clear. Disbursements would be private. Recipient families would be told only that a community donor had made the contribution. The source would not be disclosed unless the donor specifically chose to disclose it. Anita Webb had been one of those 11 families. Her son Marcus had been 19 years old, a senior in high school, watching his mother figure out how to rebuild a life from nothing in a winter that did not stop coming. He had enrolled at Georgia Perimeter College the following year. An anonymous partial scholarship had covered a portion of his tuition for 3 consecutive years. Marcus had asked the nonprofit twice who the donor was. Both times the answer was the same: a community member who prefers to remain anonymous. He was looking at the community member now. His throat had closed. He stood there with both of his careful, deliberate hands at his sides and said nothing, because there was nothing yet that could be said. Shaq reached into his hoodie a second time. He produced a business card. He held it out. "Call the number on the back," he said. "Tell them I said all 4 years are covered." He paused 1 beat. "And tell your mother she raised someone right." Marcus took the card with both hands. Dorothy Simmons had her hand over her mouth. The teenager in the red jacket was completely still. Raymond Holt was holding a list of 847 families and understanding, in real time and in stages, the full shape of what had been unfolding in his store. Philip Harrison had been right. He was always right. Don't be a reaction. Be a response. What no one in that aisle grasped yet was the full geometry of how this convergence had assembled itself. Marcus Webb had not been assigned to aisle 7 by design. He had taken that floor shift as a swap. A coworker needed a Saturday off. He had clocked in at noon. He had been placed in electronics by the schedule. He had been in that precise location, straightening that precise display, when Shaq came through the door. And Shaq had not selected Whitfield's randomly. His advanced coordinator had identified the store based on inventory data weeks earlier. The coordinator had called ahead. Raymond Holt himself had confirmed the tablet stock by phone. Shaq had known the store's name. He had known the manager's name. He had not known a 22-year-old named Marcus Webb worked there. The intake file from the 2016 giveaway, standard procedure, a family photograph attached, had shown a woman named Anita Webb and a teenager standing beside her. Shaq had looked at that photograph when it crossed his desk 3 years earlier. He had not connected the name tag in the aisle at first glance. He had connected it the moment he read it fully. The drawing in the security booth window, the crayon stick figure in the orange shirt, the careful block letters reading "Thank you, MR." Big Man had been made 4 years earlier by a 7-year-old girl from one of the previous giveaway families. The security guard on duty kept it because the girl's grandmother had walked up to his booth and placed it in his hands personally on the day the giveaway had come to that location. He had carried it from post to post for 4 years. Shaq had seen it coming in. He had recognized the handwriting style from 40-something letters in a folder at his office. All 3 clues. The drawing, the highlighted list. The careful hands of the young man in the blue vest. All 3 had been pointing here from the moment he walked through the door. In the end, here is what that afternoon made of each person in it. A store manager who let fear speak before judgment could show that the antidote to that particular mistake is not a company policy. It is a person who chose not to match it. Raymond Holt completed mandatory sensitivity training, retained his position, and 6 months later was promoted to District Customer Relations Manager. He has never put the paper from his hands out of his mind. He keeps the memory of how it felt to hold a list of 847 names as the corrective to what he almost let himself become. A retired principal who stood and watched and cried without explanation proved that witnessing with complete attention is its own form of action. Dorothy Simmons has told this story to every class she has visited as a guest speaker since that afternoon. A teenager who put his phone away and kept the moment for the people in the room decided, without quite knowing he was deciding, what kind of person he was going to be. And a 22-year-old from Decatur, Georgia, who stood up in a store aisle when standing up had a professional cost, when it was not required, when no one would have blamed him for stepping back, found out that someone had seen him doing exactly that for 3 years before he knew it. Dorothy Simmons said it afterward to no one in particular, standing in the Bluetooth speaker aisle, still not fully composed. He stood up, she said. So did he. 5 words. That was all. But they carried everything. If this story stayed with you, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. We read every single one. If you believe a man who walked into a store with a list of 847 names deserved to finish his shopping, give this video a like. It tells the algorithm that this story matters and helps it reach the people who need to hear it. Subscribe if you want more stories like this one. This community has been growing every week. because people keep showing up for each other. The video that's waiting for you on screen right now hits just as hard as this one did. We promise you that. We will see you there.